Hello and welcome to TARDIS Rubbish, where our brains are bigger on the inside but still can't contain our rubbish opinions about Doctor Who. Today it's all about The Giggle, the third of the 60th anniversary specials, which saw the debut of Ncuti Gatwa as the 15th Doctor. We think. Pretty sure that's what happened. There's a lot going on. I'm Josh, and joining me today, he is the host of The Secret Origins of Mint Condition, and the reason that this podcast and Trash Compactor, a Star Wars podcast, both exist. Welcome, James.
Thank you for having me back.
And he is a frequent contributor to both Secret Origins and Trash Compactor. Welcome, John.
Hey, everyone.
And my longtime friend and even longer time Doctor Who fan. Welcome, Guy.
Hey guys, it's the white beard. It really helps sell the fact that I've been a fan for years.
All right, so The Giggle. There's a lot in this one. Let's start with overall thoughts. John, we texted a little, so I'd like for you to start off.
Oh boy, this was one hell of an episode. I enjoyed it so much. I was watching it a few times over the span of 2 days just to get it all in, but I absolutely loved it. I knew that going in with a title like The Giggle, it was going to be like, all right, he's going for the silly, but that's going to be the subterfuge to get us right in the gut. And I thought it was going to be a little, maybe darker or sadder. I don't think I've ever smiled as much as I did both throughout the episode and for the last act, the last 15 minutes or so, where I was surprised by everything that happened. I was just like, this is not what I was expecting, and I am absolutely delighted. And now I'm supercharged for the next Doctor. I am delighted as to what they did with everything, and it's like they gave us, well, to jump sort of to the end concept, like the idea of coming home, it felt like coming home, but also getting a new journey to start as well. And I don't know how they did that. Like that's two things that you don't usually get in one episode, is the idea of excitement about the new adventures of a show and also feeling like I came home and I love this and I'm also getting all the nostalgia, but I'm not, I didn't walk away with this grand feel of like sadness and loss. And maybe that's what they were trying to do this time, was let's not, maybe this time not quite traumatize the audience, but give them some real stuff to look forward to and also look back on. I don't know, I guess that's my general sense, but yeah, I loved it.
No, I love that's how it hit you. And speaking of the title, The Giggle, I can't help but feel it has a double meaning. I feel like it's kind of Russell T Davies giggling a little bit with the Bi-Regeneration trick that he pulled. I don't know. Guy, what about you? Overall thoughts?
Overall thoughts was 11 out of 10. And I had the same feeling that John had, in that it felt like this was a wrap-up of 60 years worth of history for me. It was like a wrap-up and a culmination, and it came to a head, and then it was just a kind of closure. It was really a great little button on all this other stuff, and now we're starting, not just because with every regeneration we basically start kind of like at a new point. This just seemed like closure, and the Doctor's now able to, after all this time, he figured out what it was that he was trying to get to, why it is that he did what he did and does what he does, and now it's time for a little bit of a me time while the Doctor continues on. It was really well done. Some of these regenerations, I've cried and blah, and oh, I'm gonna miss you, and I just thought it was a nice little closure. I thought it was great closure after 60 years. It was great. It was great, and I'm looking forward even more to seeing what they do and how they switch it. And looking at the trailer and the clips that I've seen coming up for the Christmas special, this feels different. So in a good way.
James, your overall thoughts?
This episode conflicted me. I'm gonna say, but when I start saying that, it's not because I didn't like it. while the Doctor was having this bi-generational thing, I was sort of having a beside myself moment as a person who's a fan, but also a person who, and again, I'm not a professional writer, but a person who likes to create. The two of us were having like a conversation about how this episode went, because I loved it as a fan, but like the idea of the regeneration of the Doctor, I feel like, we've talked a few times on this podcast about it, the idea of children and how people watch it and stuff. Like the idea of the regeneration of the Doctor kind of gets used to the idea that change is part of life. And sometimes things have to end, and that's just part of life. Like whether you like it or not, something's going to change, something's going to end. And also it's the idea that Doctor Who, as we spoke about, like gives you something new for the time or something new to get used to. Like Doctor Who changing lets you know that things have to end, but also that things can begin and you have to get used to new things. But now we got the best of both worlds, which is, and sort of, and I hate to use this word because I think it's used so much, but fan service. I don't want to say that word for it, but I can't think of a better term for kind of what we got here, because you get to keep David Tennant. And you get Ncuti Gatwa, you get the new Doctor, you get Ncuti as the 15th Doctor, and I don't quite know like how I feel about that. But that being said, and Josh, we talked about this. I'm a comic book reader. I love comic books, and this is not new to me. This concept, because I've seen social media stuff, and people are either in love with it or they're in an uproar, and I'm like, this has happened for a long time in Marvel, DC, and any other comic book. There's an established character who's had a whole long history of continuity and what you think they are. And then a writer comes along and they introduce something new, and it either clicks or it doesn't. And then sometimes it stays and sometimes it goes away. I mean, JMS, one of our favorite writers here, creator of Babylon 5, as everyone always likes to point out, like he came aboard Spider-Man years ago and he changed the origin. He was like, Spider-Man didn't get bitten by a radioactive spider and become Spider-Man. He became Spider-Man because that spider was meant to bite him by destiny and transfer its power over into Spider-Man. And people were like, that was amazing. And some people were like, you changed the canon. And this is, so Doctor Who being able to do this now, where you get to keep a Doctor and you also get a Doctor, I'm fine with as a fan opinion. But that whole like kind of closure, and you only get this new Doctor that you have to get used to. Creatively, I'm still kind of wrestling with that, but not in a way where I think it's terrible, or I'm always on board for the ride. I mean, I've said many times on Secret Origins and Trash Compactor, like having read and been part of pop culture for so long, just show me something new, try something new out. Mm-hmm. If it fails, fine. If it doesn't, great. But I like to see someone trying stuff and just giving me the same old stories. Josh, I know I rambled on there, so I don't even know if I answered your question, but those are my feelings kind of about it.
You answered it perfectly, and I actually think you articulated my feelings almost exactly about the special. Again, I didn't not like it. Well, let me back up for a second. Saturday morning, I woke up with a horrible stomach flu. I had the shivers. I had a fever. It was really the opposite of what I thought my Saturday was going to be. I went into Saturday thinking, oh, great, I'm going to watch the new Doctor Who. I'm going to see the new Doctor. It's going to be great. Instead, I woke up and I felt awful. Ugh. So when I watched it, I was struggling. I was like, I've got to watch this. I've got to watch this. And so my first viewing was suboptimal, but I watched it again. And yeah, James, I think you really hit the nail on the head. One of the things that I love about Doctor Who is that it does teach you that everything ends and it's sad, but things change and life moves on. And, one of the reasons I think Doctor Who has lasted so long is because built into it is that seed of reinvention. Like the idea that Doctor Who is a show where your favorite show is going to be canceled and this new show is going to saunter off masquerading as the old show that you loved. And that reinvention is kind of a part of it. And so it's cool. Like you definitely get the sense that Ncuti Gatwa is the Doctor. I don't think he was upstaged. I think it was risky to have him and David Tennant, the most popular Doctor in modern Who, and the brand new Doctor without a track record, the unknown quantity, share the screen for so long, but I think Ncuti Gatwa really, made it his own. I thought it was really interesting. You really got the sense of seeing Ncuti and David Tennant on screen at the same time. David Tennant really felt like the older Doctor. He felt like an old man on the screen.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I'm so used to thinking of him as like young and fresh-faced, and but he really felt like an old man.
And it was commented on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had to go through like, which one of us is older?
Okay, old man, time to get out. I'm younger than you. He's younger than you. Okay, kid, get out.
So about that, let's talk about the mechanics of the Bi-Regeneration. What actually happened? Because the visual language, what we just saw visually, made it seem like it was like a clone. He like literally split. The TARDIS literally emerged from the other TARDIS. But in dialogue, it seemed like this was a future incarnation pulled into this moment. I'm not sure exactly what happened. I'm not sure that it necessarily matters because, again, for all intents and purposes, in terms of the real world and not the world of the actual show, the regeneration happened. We have a new Doctor. Ncuti Gatwa was the new star of the show. So for all intents and purposes, it doesn't really matter what the in-universe mechanics were. But I am curious because I've read online, a lot of people are confused about exactly what happened. Like, was it a clone situation? Was it a time travel situation? Was it shenanigans from the Toymaker? What are your thoughts on what we actually saw?
I think that last part is what they really went with because they drove in hard. And before we get to the Toymaker, who I think Neil Patrick Harris, I was like, okay, is he going to ham it up too much or too little? It was like, oh no, he did it perfectly. He was just the right level we needed for that kind of role and villain. But the idea of play, the idea of rules that are outside of our universe, which they again started in the second episode, which is being on the edge of the universe. Which what in the world is that? Well, it's some sort of mathematics we'll get to in a couple centuries. So we're already way out of what we can actually conceive of right now, and imagining both outside the universe and then because of his cleverness and the salt, opening the way to this thing from nearly 60 years ago, which was on the other side of the underverse, something we don't even know. I mean, I have no idea what that part of the mythos is. And it sounds like they only did it very briefly early on in the show, defying any understanding of physics that we have. So just with all that said, it's a Toymaker. It is a realm of play. It defies all rules. So if we're going to try to apply all the rules we know, we have to take into consideration, but wait, there are no rules except for like the rules of play, which are this entirely other thing. So whether it's going to be a traditional regeneration that maybe just brought somebody out of time, or is it a cloning? Those are our current universe concepts. And this is the remnant energy of first is the energy of the Toymaker, a Toymaker, and then the second TARDIS, the remnant energy. So I think it's something that we sort of have to accept as a quantum wave and particle at the same time, seemingly contradictory but possible. And I as a viewer am actually, I don't know, this is sort of the way I watch shows now. If the story gets me and I feel like, I really enjoyed that, and I can tell that they're trying, I say, yeah, this works. This is something totally new. It's probably unique to this situation. You'd have to have the Toymaker and outside of the universe being involved. I don't think they're going to be doing it repeatedly. It just sort of works as a completely side notion, something that was a myth, something that maybe the Time Lords never do. And remember, those Time Lords, there was a 13 regeneration limit, all this other stuff. And that was because the Time Lords probably controlled regeneration, and maybe they were keeping the information on what it was very locked down. That's a cool way you can write that too. So that gives all the future writers a lot of leeway to say, like, yeah, we're going to play with this for the next 60 years.
Yeah, I was just going to add to your, John, like I watched the BBC like official wrap-up show afterwards. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys caught that, but the hosts on there like had like Russell T Davies like gave them some information, and he popped in for like a few pre-recorded clips about the Bi-Regeneration, and I don't quite know the mechanics he was trying to explain, but apparently this is something that can happen with Time Lords, and also because it happened here, it had a cascading effect down through all his previous regenerations, which he said is why Tom Baker is old and the fourth Doctor in the 50th regeneration is what they're implying. That when Matt Smith met Tom Baker, that was the fourth Doctor, is what their little group of people were talking about. So I don't, and Russell T Davies can obviously change this at any point, but it's very confusing. Like, we had the guy there trying to explain it, and he didn't quite say what was happening, except this is, I guess, a new form of regeneration that now is open to all previous incarnations. And I don't know if you guys did, but they had these TARDIS clips, like these shorter 5-minute things with the previous Doctor. I didn't watch them, but he said like all of those are apparently their older version of the Doctor because of this regeneration thing that split off. So I don't know. That doesn't help our conversation, but it's just what Russell T Davies is implying.
If we can get behind the Watcher being the Doctor all along and melding with the Doctor after a traumatic fall from a radio telescope, and merging, Cho-Chi and the last Pertwee story, Planet of the Spiders.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
If we can get behind, two Doctors being side by side and then just kind of morphing into one, why are we having I see some part of the Doctor Who fandom having, a conniption that the Doctor has regenerated into two. Why is he split? And on to just piggyback on that, there's that line saying, basically they're talking to each other, saying, "You go heal yourself because I am better because you are going to go do this." So my thinking is that this is not a Doctor pulled from the future. This is a brand new Doctor who has the memories. And we'll have the memories as, the 14th Doctor gathers his memories, and we'll have the memories in his head. He won't, I'll just remember him as memories. And he remembers that he did this. He went away and he got better.
And Guy, I think you're getting on what the episode, and maybe what this entire 60th anniversary was really about right there, was about the healing. Because that they started off early on with again some really cool nostalgia, the Avengers Tower. The Unit Tower, and so Kate Lethbridge Stewart, and just the reunion of that, Mel, all these people, and the sense that set up the groundwork for the idea of coming home. Mm-hmm. And then Donna early on mentioning that, I was in your head, I was there, you are staggering along, wearing yourself out. Maybe that's why your old face came back. And then he immediately diverts, because that's classic 10th, 14th Doctor, is to, it's like, imagine him actually in therapy. The therapist would probably be going crazy. You stop diverting. That's what that Doctor does. And this was about completely transforming that mindset to that endpoint where the 15th Doctor comes in, and which I thought was also hilarious. If we're going to nitpick about anything, it was that when they split and only one has pants, they both still had a white shirt. So there is an inconsistency that the script supervisor missed.
No, that was a
I
t-shirt.
thought it was
a t-shirt.
Yeah, I thought it was the undershirt.
Like an undershirt, and then
the
Ncuti
undershirt
had the button-down shirt.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. There you go. Is that we now know the limits of Bi-Regeneration does not apply to clothing. So that is established canon now. But the whole point, as you sort of said, was of it is encapsulated in this one line. He said, "I'm fine because you fixed yourself. We're Time Lords. We're doing rehab out of order." I sat there and he was like, I was shoved back into my chair like those old Maxwell audio cassette commercials. It just blew me away. And I thought, that's so beautiful. And that, the Doctor's always been running. The Doctor's always been running from something, and they've each writer and showrunner has had their own take on what the Doctor is running from externally and internally. And this was sort of the idea of, you know what? I think if I were coming to this show, I can very much see Russell Davies being like, dear Lord, we've just gone through a collective trauma globally. We're still really messed up, in many ways getting more messed up. Trauma seems to be the theme of so much modern sci-fi. We've talked about this reviewing episodes of Star Trek Picard, New World's Discovery. All those shows seem to be really doing that, but I'm seeing it everywhere. And this was instead of just talking about being traumatized, This was like, yeah, you fixed yourself, but it's a process. We're doing out of order. So I'm going to give you a hug and it's okay. And then the 10th, 14th Doctor realizes in those end moments with Donna's family, this is what he's been fighting for. Because this is like, what the hell? Why are we, the Pandorica, the Time War, all of this? What the hell? I love that line. What the hell? Which is, yeah, like, what? Why is all this happening? And why are you involved in all of them and never getting to sit down for a moment? And that's what I took away, was that the sadness wasn't nearly as profound as it was in the past of leaving companions. Because listen, David Tennant's 14th Doctor is there hanging out with Donna. She's mortal. She's human. He's now 1 billion years old. How that calculates out is interesting, but realistically, probably centuries of remembered experience, and she's going to die. The family's going to pass on. Like, everything is going to change. But he's there, able to enjoy those moments now. He's able to enjoy a family, and yeah, you know what? And he says, "I'm the happiest I've ever been," and that's and he's not dumb. He knows that too shall pass. Doctor Who's not missing that concept. But it's almost a very sort of like, again, it's almost a therapeutic viewpoint of stop for a moment, live in the moment, knowing that there'll be more adventures to come, more problems to come. You can have these beautiful moments with people and not worry about everything else or when it's going to end. That was my personal takeaway, which was just, yeah, you get to do it. And maybe he does that. Maybe he hangs around for 10 or 20 years. It could be the earthbound adventures like they did previously with Doctors, of this Doctor. They could do some audio dramas that are more, limited in scope if they chose. But it would be the, like, yeah, he's chilling and really working on himself and really, fixing so that now the 15th Doctor is out there going wild, having crazy journeys, adventures, and fun. Like, and almost in a way that gets a real reset to where it's not just running away from something, but running towards new things. That was what I thought thematically this episode worked, because it did all of that. And I think writing it that way is why I'm so damn excited for what comes next. And we know that they dropped a hint in this episode as to what comes next. What was the he who hides? He was hidden.
Who waits?
Who waits? Who was monkey?
The one who waits.
The one who was hiding from the Toymaker. The Toymaker was like, nope, not even I was going to go up against that. So, all right, we know something big is coming. We know something big is coming, and we get that set up. But now, even though it's ominous, it doesn't feel like it's tragic.
Yeah.
There's been more of a sense of tragedy recently. And before I get off my long soapbox in this, I had read in the lead up to this, Russell Davies has always been really good at writing about loss. But I know from articles about him, he's experienced a lot of loss since his time in Doctor Who. Some very personal loss, things that we all go through to one extent, but it sounds like it really was really tough. And I think that this writing shows added life experience to coming back to a show and being like, yeah, and this is how we're going to go forward. And that's why I think we really are in for a real treat with this new season. And yeah, Ncuti Gatwa, phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. Just in the 15 minutes we got, really, really, really exciting. And yeah, I haven't watched any trailers or previews. Happy to be spoiled on them, but I'm happy to go in on Christmas and just experience whatever it's going to be.
He also seemed very, I think, joyful in a way that previous incarnations of the Doctor, obviously they all have, moments of happiness and joy and levity and play. But he seemed not so weighed down, I think, because of that healing that 14 goes through and then bestows upon him. I also got the impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I don't mean to speak for something I don't really know about, but he seems overtly queer-coded from everything I've seen. Not only is he joyous, but he's joyously queer, which I think is fantastic. And I also think shows a progression, like you were saying, John, from Russell T Davies personally, because, when he brought the show back, there's a reading that the Ninth Doctor, having survived the Time War, you can read that as survivor's guilt as a gay man surviving the AIDS crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think to go from there 20 years later, now he's writing. It seems to me, from what we've seen, which albeit hasn't been that much, but he's writing the Doctor as like a furiously, gloriously, visibly queer character, which I think is beautiful.
I mean, when he took up the mallet and before he split the TARDIS into two, he had a very gay moment when he was like, "Let's stand back," you know. But I was like, "Oh, hey, girl." It seems there has been, though, a collective, I'll say it again, a massive conniption in some areas of fandom that how dare the Doctor become a queer character or even overtly gay character. I mean, for those of you who saw the trailer, you know, it opens up with Ncuti in the nightclub dancing with his arms above his head and in a white tank top, you know, swaying to some music, and that's when he meets, you know, Ruby Sunday. And I was like, it screamed like, yes, sure, yes, that's who he is. He's not human. So your narrow-minded mentality has nothing to do with this alien who has experienced, out of his mouth, billions of years of experiences. So why don't you sit back, Ken, and sit back, Karen, and just let somebody, you know, that it knows what they're doing run the show, and you just pipe down, please, with your narrow-minded bigness, and enjoy the show. Because, you know, even the Doctor, you know, what would the Doctor do? The Doctor embraced Rose Noble Temple without batting an eyelash. Yet on this side of the screen, people's heads are melting off their flipping bodies. So is the Doctor is it queer baiting? I don't think it's queer baiting. I just think it's a natural progression. I think it's why not? After 60 years of it varied this way, why can't it suddenly veer a little bit this way? Why can't it be more fluid?
I agree. Well,
you remember that there was even a reaction against Matt Smith because he was too young.
Right.
There was a lot of pushback on Matt Smith being too young. And again, he's one of my absolute favorite Doctors. Mm-hmm. And because I wouldn't say there was early queer coding, but there was definitely some pushing of boundaries that he wasn't following human binary sexual and gender mores because he was the Doctor. He was beyond and encompassed that. Like it was these other things. So he sort of played with little bits here and there. And that was because he was just out there. So to limit those concepts, I mean, like biologically, two hearts. Like it's not meant to be this isolated thing, but that was a change off of the history. Even Christopher Eccleston was a bit of a change as they were going in a younger direction. He was darker as a Doctor, but also had this whimsy to him. And then when I think about all this, they introduced Captain Jack with the Ninth Doctor. And that's 2006. And as a he is gay in the show, but he's specifically, I think the word was omnisexual. He would sleep with anybody who was hot, any species, any gender. It was just like, okay, if they're hot and I'm into them, we're going for it. And both the 9th and the 10th had to keep him. They were like, okay, can you stop? Like, can you not hit on them? Like, we are trying to save the universe right now. And that was fun, but it was also a very 2006 portrayal, which was, okay, we're going to get somebody who generally presents as gay on screen, and it's going to be like a very specific version of that. They're going to be gay, and it's going to be about sex. It's going to be about all of that. And we've come a long way since even those years. You know, go back to the 90s and some of the first characters you see on TV, to where now it is not only something that is just sort of there and part of culture, but it's people who are not just tied down by tragedy. As you know, any character in the 90s, it was because of the HIV epidemic. In the aughts, it was sort of like, well, we're here, but we're fighting, but it's really difficult. Now it's like we're gonna have a great time with this. We're gonna share with you what our experiences are and just enjoy it. So the first scene being dancing, yeah, go for it, because that's what we want for literally every group of people everywhere, is to get to the point where it's just, yeah, this is who I am. I'm going to celebrate it and smile. Like, this is where it is. To see Russell Davies obviously went on that journey himself, like in terms of as a writer, to go from like, this is a portrayal of this era. You know, he did Queer as Folk, completely different portrayal of LGBT life. Later on, years and years, about 5-6 years ago, very different. And now there's another, I think he did another show similarly, Cucumber.
It's a sin.
All different perspectives. And now it's this.
And it's a sin.
That's right. That's right. And now this is this. And I'm like, yeah, I'm here for it. But that's what I love about watching a writer's journey, is that they're not the same writer they were. And the danger with bringing somebody back to a show, and I think we've seen it in other shows before, is that you go back to the old, you go back to the tried and the true, you bring back the old showrunner, and all they do is go in their old bag of tricks. And they do the same thing over and again.
Terry Nation, anyone?
You know, so what happens, and that's why I think these episodes worked, is because it was a writer who had and a showrunner who had clearly taken new perspectives, new experiences, and brought that in while holding on to the old, and also his conflicted view on human nature, which I think that Davies and Moffat both really mastered, because you have Peter Capaldi's Doctor giving that brilliant speech about humanity and basically how awful we can be and how we are. That made its way into this episode. And it was there. It was like, yeah, the Toymaker, you know, set this up. But the lines on that were absolutely brutal. They were brutal about what we are as human beings. I mean, I think the line was something like, don't think you have an excuse, you know. He said, you may be clever and brilliant and everything else, but you are savage and relentless. All that anger, the lies, the righteousness, that's human. That's who you are. And again, that was like a shake me moment. I was like, yeah, no, that's the point. Because for all the joy we're experiencing with this episode, it was reminding us, is like, this is where we're at now. Don't shy away from it. And to all the people criticizing, like, oh, I can't deal with a different portrayal of the Doctor, that's what that's for, is to say, like, you all think you're right. Everybody's obsessed with thinking they're right. And this is like literally taking everybody, like,
it's the whole episode.
You're really right. I mean, yeah, we love to think we're right, but I think the best part comes when you realize, like, maybe there's something I missed that can further enrich the experience and make me go, wow. That's sometimes the best of sci-fi shows, is that you think you got one thing and all of a sudden you're blown away by something you never realized you were understanding was completely different. That for me is a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, that's actually something I think the last 20 minutes and like the momentous nature of this episode, I think overshadows what was actually a really good episode in terms of, you know, the premise and the themes and stuff. I think, John, what you were talking about, the Doctor's speech about humanity and saying, you know, I mean, don't think you're off the hook. Like, this is you. I very much read that as Russell T Davies' reaction to what we all saw during the pandemic, and has only continued. I mean, arguably it started earlier than the pandemic. It was just sort of supercharged, but how, you know, we've all kind of gone a little crazy, and we're all in our own little information bubbles, and there's a self-righteous streak, and I think everyone has just kind of lost their minds a little bit, and we have
people
to figure out
how speaking like they're tweeting.
Speaking like they're tweeting, yeah. You know, something has happened collectively where we've all just sort of forgotten that we are, you know, members of a larger community that needs to work together sometimes to make the whole thing work for everybody. I don't know. I thought that was a very, you could feel the fury I think Russell T Davies felt or feels from what he's seen happen in the world the last few years. And I thought tying that in with John Logie Baird and the invention of television, I think is such a fantastic hook for a Doctor Who episode, and tying that into mass media and how that has fueled our collective undoing, I thought was just, you know, really clever and really potent and wonderfully done. And that's something that both Davies and Moffat were so good at. They have these brilliant ideas that could, on their own, take center stage, but they're sort of overshadowed because of all the other amazing ideas that are sort of crammed into the episode. And that's sort of how I felt with this. I feel like that on its own could have sustained the episode if you got rid of the regeneration and the anniversary nature of it. And God, it was creepy. The people turned into marionettes and like. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about
the little baby dolls were creepy too. Like it
was.
Okay. Baby dolls always freak me out.
It was properly scary, clever Doctor Who. So let's talk about the Toymaker as a villain and also Neil Patrick Harris's performance. How do we feel about the Toymaker?
Well, I hope he comes back. I mean, he's so much fun. He didn't necessarily chew the scenery. He did gnaw it, and I appreciated that. I just loved every flipping minute he was on screen, even to the point where when the Doctor and Donna were looking through the window of the toy shop, and he was just ducking behind. He was playing. Yeah, the minute the Doctor sees, he's playing. Minute he interacts, every time he interacts with anybody, he's playing. He's playing with them. He's playing with the gentleman who buys the Stooky Bill. He plays with him, and it plays with him in a not so subtle, kind of being a little racist way too. Saying you're not used to these climes. I'm so sorry about the rain. You're probably used to warmer climes. And he's like, I was born just like 10 miles from here.
Yeah.
It was just really good. It was really, really good. And I like the going in and out of the different accents, different characters. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Yeah, well, that's kind of how he rehabbed the kind of racist conception of the character as like a Chinese stereotype. He sort of made it. Right, yeah, the Mandarin. He said he sort of made it, well, that's kind of the Toymaker's thing. He's racist toward all kinds of cultures. Like, I mean, that's just sort of what he does. Which if you think about it is like pretty sinister. I actually think that it was a good way of acknowledging the racist history of the character while still making it, work.
The Toymaker's not human, so he can wear whatever he wants. I mean, I don't think of it as a cultural appropriation if he's appropriating everything that's human. I mean,
it's not just the appropriation part. I think the issue is also like the word celestial, I think, is a derogatory term for Chinese people.
Celestial? Really?
Yeah. I don't think it's very commonly known, but at the time, it's hard not to imagine that was in the head of the writer. So I mean, it's just something that I think today would be sort of avoided. So yeah, I mean, I thought like for that reason, it was a not without controversy choice to bring the character on screen in 2023, but I thought that Russell T Davies handled it very well.
I think it was an interesting way because I didn't know until I Googled more about the history of the character. And, you do see some problematic writing from the 60s, but the way he was playing with the different accents and this, where the German comes in, where the American comes in, and where he sort of goes back to a default of this staid British accent is usually when they're talking about the rules. I thought was again a way that the character's playing with us, playing with the perceptions we have of that. And when the Doctor does say like we could be in the stars, we could be celestial, that's when the Toymaker's like, yeah, but on the other hand, these humans, like I am obsessed with them. They are great. The games they play with each other. And I love when he goes, and then there are the mind games. And he goes right, the next line is, he goes, the mind games, the dating, the ghosting, the deceit and control. I'm like, oh my God. Yes, you are completely right. Like, he goes, you make me dizzy. So he's obviously saying, I don't want to leave this place. So like, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot like on the nose stuff where this is, which again, I find to be at least, a lot of the modern Doctor is calling us out, and why the Doctor does get disappointed in us. It's like, oh man, why are you behaving like this? Like, you can do so much better. And he's even trying to get that through to he gives the villains that same chance, like the Toymaker, sort of says like, well, we could be playing in the stars, but also like, why do you have to do this? Why don't you have like, why don't you think of good and evil? And that's where that was the interesting part about the Toymaker as a villain, is that he's both whimsical and dark at the same time, because he goes, I am beyond all of that. I am endless, and all I care about is winning and losing. And he didn't seem to necessarily, even though he didn't like losing in the end, didn't in that statement express a preference. He wanted the game, which ties to me thematically back into the whole online thing, everybody being connected and everybody being right, is that every interaction we have on social media is about being right or being wrong. It's about winning and losing. You win the argument or you lose the argument. It's actually not about the morality. Are you doing the right thing or the wrong thing? Are you seeing it from a moral perspective? It's more important in the way that our current media and technology shapes things. It's more important to win. It's more important to be the one who comes out on top, rather than maybe learn something or evolve. And it was all woven in there, which is what Doctor Who is at its best. They give us the A story and the B story, as we were talking about last week. And this A story was so dark and whimsical. I mean, the Spice Girls, I was living for that. I was just like, here we go. And meanwhile, but also horrible death at the same time. So I wonder what their opinion is. I wonder what the Spice Girls think about their song.
They loved it. They posted about it on social media. They loved it.
I love that. That's great.
I mean, two soldiers are killed basically and turned into rubber bouncing balls during their song. I mean, how amazing and gruesome is that? And funny?
Yeah.
Is that wrong?
Yeah, all of it, which is part of the show, and it's sort of back. That's what we've been, that's what we like from it, but we're also like, oh, that was also creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was the right kind of mixture of scary and creepy and playfully whimsical. Yeah. I think the Toymaker was a really successful villain, and I think Neil Patrick Harris's performance was great.
I mean, because Neil Patrick Harris did all the puppeteering himself for those puppets. Like,
right.
They had to and he did in real time too, because I was watching. Yep. They had a very tight shooting schedule, and he's like, "This, you have to give me the puppets. I gotta do the marionette, cut the string. You gotta give me the next one," and he did that all in real time. So that was all him, because they were gonna have puppeteers do it, and it was too complicated. He's like, "I'll just do it," and he did all the close hand magic. Like, he admits some of it was sped up because I can't do all of that fast, but he did all the close up magic and stuff like that. So he was the guy for this part.
What the fuck is a Vlynx?
The Vlynx.
The Vlynx.
Hello, the Vlynx.
The Vlynx.
It just was there. It was the Mr. Smith.
It seemed familiar, like for some reason, but I can't.
It just was a weird, oh hey, you're there.
But I love it. So, it's like, hello, the Vlynx, and that was what it was. It's like the Vlynx, not Vlynx, but the Vlynx.
The Vlynx struck me as something that they recovered from a crashed spaceship, and they just sort of hooked up.
It's setting up the fact that Unit has been up to stuff. They're also interacting with, because that's their job, with aliens, unknown things, and working into it. I sort of like the idea of it's like your father spent all this time trying to conceal Unit, and now here you are. And there we go with the theme again, out and proud, in Avenger Tower. I cannot get over that, because every time I saw that, I was like, okay, we know what this is. But the idea that Unit is now sort of this publicly recognized thing, because you know what? At some point, you can't stop denying that every Christmas there's an alien ship coming down on London. Every Christmas. So at some point, people are going to get used to that notion. But that was also one of those fun little additions into the show that maybe we'll get more of, maybe we won't. But it also set up a Unit to be having a role in the next show, and I think there's where we're going to see some of the continuity is going to be between, some of the things they've set up here, some of the characters they've introduced. I really think that that's a very cool way of keeping us, again, like they've done it in the past, where the Doctor regenerates but still sees previous companions. And going back to what you were talking about earlier, I don't think this is any way going to be an issue of like, oh, but what is the 14th Doctor up to? I think they've buttoned that up. I'm totally there for like other forms of media exploring maybe what the 14th Doctor does on Earth, or maybe his time in therapy. I don't know. That could be a show in and of itself. But I feel comfortable with that because I feel like the people running the show and the people that they're going to be bringing on as writers respect that. I don't think that the Doctor or that Ncuti Gatwa was going to have any difficulty being the Doctor. He is going to be the Doctor of this era, and nobody's going to question that. And the vibe in the very end was very clear about that. When he goes, it's like, all right, old man, okay, kids, yeah, off. And then Donna's like, I'm not going through this again. And she just walks up. She doesn't want to be rolled off the TARDIS again. That is beneath her. And her negotiating for more salary.
Yeah.
Yes.
$60,000, 120,000, 5 weeks vacation, done.
She's like, and her at the computer, like doing this, the fastest on keyboard in London. I love how they gave Donna Noble real props for like who and what she is, because she was always underselling herself, and this time it was like, nope. Which, yeah, that's her character's own journey. Was she was going to advocate for herself and be like, yeah, 120, and yeah, and now has something to do and is going to have this, like her own sort of adventures, which will be kind of funny because probably brings that home to the Doctor, who might be like hanging out in the backyard and be like, hey, what do you think? We encountered this thing, and he's going to want to help. Be like, no, we got this at Unit. You're going to hang out. I mean, I could just see how they've set all this up for that sort of like interesting life that they would lead. And clearly he's using the TARDIS because he took Rose to Mars already.
Mel to New York.
Yeah. Do you think what was it, the Zlingo, the
Zingo?
Zingo, is that just space Uber? Like, is that what that is? That's what I thought. I'm like, they're just like, oh yeah, you do that.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I mean, again, I don't know if it's like a throwaway gag or if it's something that is being seeded for the future. So there are a few things that Russell seeded for the future show. The one who waits, obviously.
The boss.
Is that the same character or no? I guess we don't know.
Might be the boss and the one who waits. I was thinking there might be the same.
There was a name drop that has to do with a spoiler from what I've seen of set photos of the shooting for the next season. Something along the lines of the Torchwood references in the second season. So there was a word that was said sort of offhandedly that I think is going to factor in
just say it.
A big way. Triad.
Yeah, they did.
Like Mel said something about they're running Triad in their computer thing. So there were set photos where there were trucks that say like Triad on the side. So Triad is a thing. Like, I don't know if it's like a Microsoft. Yeah, if it's like a Microsoft proxy or something. So there are definitely seeds that are being planted for the future of the show. So yeah, Zingo or whatever that was. I don't know if that's one of them or if it's just a throwaway Mavity thing.
I mean, this also seemed to me like a pilot for the Unit show that
there's gonna be,
like
there's gotta be a Unit
and the
show.
14th Doctor will probably be like a special guest, like in the pilot in the last episode. Maybe David Tennant will stick around unless they like Tennant's like on board. Like, yeah, I'll just be a human Doctor and I'll be part of Unit and we'll do our things. But the 60th anniversary episode was doing so much. But I was looking at like, this is a pilot. This is a backdoor pilot. I mean,
that set was huge.
That set was massive. That set was massive.
That's not a set you want to collapse and erect and then collapse. That's a standing set, like the TARDIS.
Yeah.
And also the Avengers Tower, it's like they made a big thing of, establishing like, here is what Unit is, and it's iconic. It has a tower, and it is this, and here's how it works. Here's who works there. Here's the scientific advisor. Here's Mel. We brought Mel into the show. So like, she's here. And I actually think it'll be really cool if you think about it. If this Unit spinoff does happen, it seems the cast is all women. So you have Kate Lethbridge Stewart, you have Mel, you have the scientific advisor, maybe Donna, who apparently works there now for $120 a year, which seems low to me for that job, but I mean, that's neither here nor there.
There's a little bit of pound to dollar conversion, but that still seems pretty low.
For that job, yeah.
Living in London is pretty high.
But yeah, I think we're definitely getting a unit spinoff because like there was a lot of ground laying for that in this. How do you think this compares to the 50th anniversary special? Like as an anniversary special, either this special or all three as a whole, because I thought they work pretty differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know for me, I was watching one of the behind the scenes things, and Russell T Davies said, you know, the anniversary specials are usually multi-doctor stories, and how he doesn't really like multi-doctor stories because he doesn't really like writing them. Like something that I think the 50th special did brilliantly was that it managed to give each of the doctors their own kind of hero moments, make them all seem like they were individual characters with their own things going on, but yet versions of the same character. And in that Stephen Moffat way of just like, he just really made a very tightly well-constructed Swiss watch of an anniversary special. And I thought the 60th was like less about let's explore the potential of a multi-doctor special, even though at the end he kind of did that because he did a multi-doctor story in a way that we've never seen it.
I mean, we got two doctors for like over 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like,
that's never happened.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, the 50th anniversary special, I don't know. I mean, I can't say better, but I did really enjoy the 50th anniversary special with the three doctors. And it was sort of like trying to put myself back then, like 10 years ago. It was a redemption doctor story because he'd been carrying that guilt that he destroyed all the Time Lords and genocided basically the Daleks, which he felt bad about. Like he killed these two races of people to save the universe. And then he gets an opportunity to not do that, to not be the, destroyer of his people, but to find a way to bring them back and to sort of reconcile the choices he made as the wartime I thought, like if you had me choose, I like the 50th better than the 60th, but it's really tough just because I just the whole story arc of that 10 years of storytelling leading to the 50th anniversary just felt really compelling and drawing and really got at that deep moment of the Doctor but then again, with this 60th special was the letting go of all the baggage and guilt of the Time War, of the Pandorica, of the Flux. It was sort of like
Adric,
letting all of that pain go that he's been through. Because, just go back to what about seeing Ncuti be the Doctor was like, aside from everything else that everyone said about appreciating what he is. Or where they are. When he came out, when he was there, it was the first, one of the first regenerations, or very few, where the Doctor knew who he was right when he came. Like, he's not like, I don't know who I am and what kind of guy. Like, Ncuti's Doctor knows I am the 15th Doctor. I'm free. I'm going to have fun. I'm free of the guilt and the pain and the horrors of what I've been through in my lifetime. And so, yeah, it's hard. I mean, I like the 50th storytelling. I like the 50th storytelling and what it did, but I also like this too that is sort of an additional addendum to the 50th anniversary, like relief of that pain and that suffering. So
there also seemed to be a lot more like pomp and circumstance in our world, on our side, leading up to it, like advertisements, posters. I mean, you knew this was coming, and it was like must-see TV. I mean, I remember seeing it with a group of people in Manhattan, and then I saw it on the big screen in 3D. I mean, there was just, at a late night showing here in New York, and it was awesome. And it was like all this, like, you just couldn't get in the media and the magazines. And this seemed to me just kind of like we're doing it.
Well, that's something I feel like the BBC made a choice that right after the 50th anniversary, they stopped doing that because I always remember, because of the time in my life where I'd moved and done things in my life, there was that time period of 2010 and 11, it was a huge media blitz for Matt Smith's Doctor in the US. And it had this very, from what I remember reading about it, it was a very like popular, like Brooklyn aesthetic, like because they were, I think that's what they were doing a lot of their like advertisements. It was on every MTA bus, but it had this sort of like alternative vibe to it, a little bit of a hipster vibe because they were filming some of it in the US, but trying to like appeal to that nature. But at the very least, the BBC was putting this huge advertising, mouth behind it in the US. So we all saw that, and particularly Matt Smith's Doctor was all over the place. Then after the anniversary, I didn't get any of that sense with Peter Capaldi's Doctor. It's like they decided, good enough, we're done. And I think there are also changes into how BBC and BBC America operated here. So who knows what was happening at the higher levels of BBC, but they really stopped caring about the US market, or at least pushing into the US market. And I myself found myself slipping from Doctor Who because I wouldn't remember, wait, when is the next season? Because there might be a year gap, a 2-year gap, a 1.5-year gap. And there was no like communication to a US audience. No media blitz, no advertisements on social media. It was just sort of like eventually
no toys.
You figure out.
I mean,
No
there was
toys.
no merch. There was no merch.
No,
You could walk into a Toys R Us and see, I mean, it was bizarre seeing merch. When I was a kid, when I was a little guy in middle school, I would, this is another story for another time, but I would have to go to be continued, a porn store in Minneapolis because the owner of this porn shop loved Doctor Who. So he cordoned off a little area, and it just had, I would go there with my dad, and I would get like, I still have this TARDIS tin with Peter Davison on it, all my books, all my magazines. Yes, he was taking me to a porn store. Anyway, but now Toys R Us is having it. And then after what you're saying, John, after the 50th, it just seemed kind of like tumbleweeds.
Yeah. And I think even now we're experiencing that. And maybe because Disney is co-producing and bringing to the US, we're going to see more. But even for Disney, I was surprised that there wasn't a bigger push, or maybe I just wasn't accessing the media where it was a big push. But it certainly is more than we've had in recent years. And I think that's going to be something we see as a little bit different. And I'm very curious to see going to the Christmas special, and the next season, how much Disney pushes it in the US, because we've been missing out on that.
Well, so that's the thing. I think the real push from Disney is going to start with Ncuti Gatwa, and, they're calling this next season 1 again. So I really think it's sort of, so because also the Disney partnership didn't happen until the specials were already, well underway. So I think as far as Disney was concerned, these 3 specials, I think is really for, frankly, the Doctor Who audience that was lost over the last few years, to kind of bring them in again and get them excited. And then where Disney really will do a huge marketing blitz and really take some ownership of, like, this is our show and we want people to be watching it. I think that that's really going to start with the Christmas special, certainly, but definitely in the lead up to series 1, I think it's going to be omnipresent. I think Ncuti's going to be everywhere. The other thing, too, is because, like you guys were saying, the 50th anniversary happened arguably when New Who was at the height of its popularity. This anniversary special happened at, I don't think it's inaccurate to say, the nadir. When they were shooting Jodie Whittaker's Regeneration, they didn't know if that was going to be the end of the show for a while. They didn't know what was coming next. The viewership had really dropped off, and I think the future was very uncertain. And I think, I think we talked about, I think it's very smart and strategic to do the nostalgia thing with the most popular modern Doctor, remind you why you love the show, then clear the table, get rid of the baggage. You bring this youthful, joyous, amazing new lead in the form of Ncuti Gatwa, the new companion and a new season 1, and you start fresh. So I think that's what we're in for. Closing thoughts on the anniversary specials. Were they what you expected? Did you guys have a favorite?
My favorite, I think, was the Star Beast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can see that.
I just, if I were to pick one out of the 3, Star Beast, just because it was So it was so needed. It was such a
Yeah.
slog. Sorry to the Chibnall era, but it was a slog getting here. Really, I mean, I enjoyed Jodie Whittaker. She's fantastic, and there were some brilliant moments, like the master reveal. Didn't see it coming. Had not been spoiled, and so when the master became on the screen, it was just like. But those were, and then the the other doctor, the renegade. What are we calling her?
The fugitive doctor.
The fugitive doctor. Yeah, thank you. Fugitive doctor. Didn't know. Had not spoiled. So there were, but those moments, I needed more of those moments, and so getting to this point was like, oh, okay, great. And I really loved all 3 episodes. I still find that Wild Blue Yonder is the creepiest Doctor Who episode I've ever seen. Creepier than Midnight. Still, to this moment, when I think back, it affected me in a way that I still can't really vocalize. And then this one was joyous and especially the very end of just I felt closure. And being a fan for 40 plus years, I physically felt like this was like closure, but yet a brand new start.
I think that was what was the greatest accomplishment of this, whether it be a 60th anniversary or just preparing for the new series, was that it gave us that sense of, and that's what we said at the beginning, was simultaneous closure and new beginning. Didn't feel dragged down by anything. Just felt built up, which I think, I want to be honest, I need that in life right now. I think generally as a people, we need that right now is to get, not to not have dark storylines, but to have something that just gives us excitement about what comes next, rather than dread or worry about it. And so that was totally accomplished. And that's something that I don't think the previous anniversary specials had to do, because they were more so just maybe specials or this was, as you said, clearing the board and starting anew. But it also showcased 3 fundamentally different kinds of episodes. That's unique to a special too. So it showed us that, wait a second, we have a lot to look forward to, because all 3 had different story types, the way they were laid out, and all of them worked for what they were. So that gives me a lot of hope going forward that we're going to get some really interesting but different episodes. And Who at its best has always been like one episode to the next, almost completely different. Like you're not just going through the same motions week after week, except you may very often get a goofy looking villain. I mean, which is what I think the Meep was all about. The Meep was all about like, yep, we're going to literally show you the cuddliest, goofiest animatronic little thing that's then going to be the creepiest villain. But because that's sort of the vibe of Doctor Who. It's not meant to be, it's not meant to put you in a place where you have to be high-minded 100% of the time. It's fun and silly as well. And to have done that differently in 3 episodes is a great preview, I think, of what we're going to get. My favorite one, that's a tough one. I think my personal favorite is the Giggle, but you know what? I almost can't say, because I really think that the Star Beast was so good and so and really had so much emotion to it. And again, the second is The Wild Beyonder was just a different style episode, but since that was more of a standalone horror, I guess that comes in second place. But I just view it as one sort of, one what do they call it? Not a compendium. It's a you get a book of different tales.
Anthology.
There we go. This is an anthology, and as far as it goes, well done.
Triptych.
Triptych.
Triptych. I just want to say triptych. James.
Yeah, I mean, despite what I hope it came across, across the beginning when we started this, like, I did really enjoy the 60th specials. I loved a lot of parts of it. And overall, I thought it was great. I don't know if I have a favorite, because I like John. I view it as like a whole piece. Like, it was a trilogy, like one thing that was divided into 3 parts. But yeah, the Star Beast was excellent. Wild Blue Yonder was creepy, and the Giggle gave us a lot to chew on as we've discussed this whole episode. So, but it, really it cleared the way for new Doctor Who, and I'm excited for it. As I said, I'm really excited for what we're going to see. I don't have a problem ultimately with the choices they made because it's storytelling, and I'm ready for more Doctor Who adventures and seeing where he goes, the character goes, and see where Russell T Davies goes.
I'm with you, James. I think I'm the outlier here. I have a clear favorite. Wild Blue Yonder was my clear favorite, just because I just thought it was so... I think I said this last week, but I felt like it was Russell T Davies showing off. He was like, just because I don't always give you what you want doesn't mean I can't do it and do it perfectly. I was... yeah, I mean, I just thought on every level, Wild Blue Yonder was just fantastic. Yeah, I'm very pleased with what we got with the 60th specials. And again, I'll just echo what everyone else has said. I'm very much looking forward to the beginning of the 15th Doctor's proper tenure. I hope you'll all return to discuss the Church on Ruby Road, the Christmas special, if you guys are up for that. After
come in.
Absolutely.
Any errant thoughts? Anything you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to say, or anything I didn't ask about? Totally
Not
fine.
a fan of the new sonic screwdriver. It's okay. That's all.
I kind of like it. Like, here's why I like it. Because it's been very clear for a long time that it is so much more than a screwdriver. I feel like it should look like... I feel like it should look like...
It has a readout.
Yeah, like if you want a tricorder, then...
Yeah.
Matt Smith, he always used to do this thing where he would like... look at it and I'm like, what the fuck are you looking at?
Looking at. Yeah.
This one actually looks like, it's like, okay, I'm sure there's something there. Oh, did you watch the video that Ncuti Gatwa made where he explained there's an inscription of a Rwandan proverb?
Oh, in Gallifreyan
that's
script.
Translated into Gallifreyan script. And it translates to, I thought this was beautiful. I just have to look it up. The sharpness of the tongue defeats the sharpness of the warrior.
Oh, that's good.
Which for the Doctor is...
Yeah.
So for Ncuti Gatwa, personally, coming from Rwanda, but also like it just shows that connection to the character and his culture, I thought was very lovely. So, Guy, I don't know if that sways you at all. I know it's not separate from the design, but I'm fine with the screwdriver. I want to thank my guests, James, John, and Guy. You're all beautiful women, probably. If you liked what you heard, please follow TARDIS Rubbish on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We'll be back after Christmas to discuss the 15th Doctor's first full adventure, The Church on Ruby Road, and until then, laugh hard, run fast, and be kind.